Hey folks, welcome back. I am just getting home. My butt is dragging, folks. It is dragging. But there's been a couple of comments and a few inquiries and email inquiries about this structure behind me. So if you're new to my channel, what this is scrap lumber from the sawmill, and it's just odds and ends, anything that could be made into a strap-in or a 2x2 or 1x1 or a 1.5x1 or whatever. Save them out because I can make small trellises. I can do a lot of things with that. So these here are, most of them are 16 footers, and they're about equivalent to, well, the ones that are going like this are equivalent to 2x2s. Some of them still have the live edge on them, some of them don't, right? So what I did was take a buttload of 16 footers, 2-inch by 2-inch, they're not boards, planks, they're not even planks, but 2x2s anyway. And some of them are pine, some of them are spruce, some of them are hemlock. It really doesn't matter for a trellis, right? So 16 footers, and what I did was I took one 16 footer here and put a 116 footer here, and then I don't have enough hands, folks, but they're going like this, and then I took another 16 footer and went like this and overlapped them a good 8-10 inches. And then I took some paracord, which paracord lasts a very long time out in the elements, right? So what I did was just weave the paracord in, and then in between each 2x2 I just went around a few times and then cinched it up and just tied it in a double knot. That's all I did. And I did this laying on the ground, and then I stood it up, and that made the base for my teepee trellis behind me, right? And then what I did was took other 2x2s, 1.5x1.5 or something like that. Whatever the sawmill could saw and not waste anything, right? And just leaned them up in between. And then for the cross pieces, I just took my drill with some wood screws and just took scrap pieces and just braced them up there and just drilled them in place. Basically, some of them are just resting on the others. They've stayed, folks. But that's what that is. It's very simple to make. If you're making a teepee trellis out of 16 footers, you can do it by yourself. You're probably going to learn to swear, right? But I did it, and just my two hands, and I did it in the spring, so it wasn't too awfully hot. And then that is spread out. That's probably 15, 18 inches from the inside bottom to the other inside bottom, and it goes around in a circle, right? So that's a pretty good teepee trellis. The plan was to put the violetta pole beans on each one of these posts, and one in between with a string or a short 2x2 or whatever, and have the pole beans climb up that. And what it's going to do is going to act like a canopy, right? So I can, when it's really hot and I'm out in the garden, I need some shade, I would just, the plan was to bring a couple of chairs up here, a couple of buckets for tables upside down, and just give myself a rest while I was working in the garden, and to get out of the heat and a place to be in the shade and drink some water, right? So that plan backfired when I planted bush beans instead of pole beans. Now what I had done was, when I collected my seeds last fall, I took the the bush beans and the pole beans, which looked exactly alike, and apparently I swapped them around, so the packet that had supposed to have had the pole beans had the bush beans and vice versa. Right? That's what you get when you're trying to be in a hurry. That's what you get when you're trying to get everything done and processed at the end of the season and you're tired and you don't pay attention, right? So I'll pay much better attention this year, trust me. So that's what that is. That'll stand for a few years. I'm not worried about it. And they're just sitting on the ground. The whole thing is kind of holding itself up. So eventually what will happen, especially with the pine, something just popped up on my screen, but it looks like I'm still recording. Especially with the pine, where it's touching the ground, it will rot, right? So worst comes to worst, I can just shorten the teepee up, right? Just take the first foot off the bottom. And I know, folks, I can do all kinds of stuff so the bottoms won't rot. I know I can, but we have a sawmill, right? So I'm not really worried about scrap lumber or timbers or 2x2s because we always end up with more than what we need. And usually they come down here because I make a lot of trellises, right? And I have birds, and they come in good for roosts. And if you want a 4x4, just take four 2x2s and just screw them together, spike them together, whatnot, and you've got a really strong 4x4, right? Made out of 2x2s. So, and you can make it 2x4s and whatnot. Not that we don't make 4x4s and 2x2s, but, you know, if I've got 2x2s and want my 2x4s for something else, and I want something in the garden a little bit stronger than a 2x2, you know, it's just a garden. It's gonna do its thing, right? So, I hope that answers your question, folks. Excuse the mess. What I did was take a blue tarp. This whole garden has blue tarp under everything, or at least around the raised beds, right? And because for those of you who are new to my channel, this ground here, years and years and years ago, used to be a cow pasture, right? So after the cows went bye-bye, it was turned into a cornfield, and later in the years it was allowed to grow up. No, all the topsoil was stripped from this area here because no one thought they'd be building a house here, right? Decided 2 years later, after all the topsoil was stripped off. But they stripped the topsoil right off to the clay, folks, and the clay is really, really, really slippery when it's wet. And this is on a slope like this, and I pick on Cousin Shay and tell Cousin Shay all her water runoff, snow melt in the spring, everything comes right across my garden, goes into a ditch that we made, and just goes around my house, right? So I had the bright idea to lay odds and ends of tarps that had holes in them. I laid them all around, took quite a few tarps, folks, but people were happy to give me their ripped or worn and tattered tarps. I was very thankful, very grateful. And I just laid them around, and then what I did from the sawmill, I took a bunch of sawdust and spread it 4 to 6 inches deep all over the tarps. And as I walked on it, as the rain hit and the snow melted and everything, it just kind of packed it down. And that sawdust eventually turned into dirt, right? So that's what that blue tarp is. That's a new part of the garden. So, you know, I haven't finished doing anything in there with that. I haven't hauled sawdust in there or anything. There's some grass in there. You can see You can see over here where there's one section over here and another section over here, right there, that does not have blue tarp. Anyway, that's what I chose to do. So that's what the blue tarp is. And eventually that will be covered up in blue tarp right here and sawdust, because I want to sit where there's not going to be any ticks on me if I'm taking a break, right? I will tell you one thing. Ticks do not like sawdust, folks. They will not climb a sawdust pile. They won't go into or walk across sawdust that I've laid down in my garden. They just don't like sawdust, folks. So what I usually do first thing in the spring is, as things are starting to come up, I'll allow my birds to come up in here, and the geese and ducks will pick any grass and stuff, and they'll pick it clean. The guinea will come up here, and the chickens will come up here, and they will clean the ticks out for me, and then I will close the gate to the garden, right? It's worked. It's worked. It's kind of, it just works. It just works for me. So that's why it looks like that. And over there are some old windows with a wooden frame. I had a bunch of windows given to me, and I used them as little mini greenhouses for my bell peppers, because bell peppers like 70-degree weather, 70-degree soil and above. So in the spring, what I will do on my small trellis over there, I'll just lean some of those windows right up. So the south is over here, and that south sun is warming that soil up, and it's open in the back and it's open on the side, so it gets a lot of air current in there and a lot of sun, so it dries that soil out a little bit ahead of time, and it warms it up, and I can get a pretty good head start on my peppers, right? Because we got a really short growing season up here. So that is that. I hope I've answered some of your questions. I know there's a lot of questions out there, folks. I know there are. I did check on the wild raisins, and the wild raisins have gone from green, whitish color. Now they have gone to a pink, and they're turning to that reddish color, so they're almost time to do a demonstration, folks. And after that pink and red stage, they'll get to the reddish, purplish, bluish stage, and that's when they're ready to pick, right? So we still have a little bit to go on that. I checked on the sumac the other day, and out of all the sumac bushes I've got here, folks, because sumac doesn't even become ripe until about a month and a half ago, but where it's been so dry, it's been delayed. And then we got all that rain, and you shouldn't pick sumac combs at least 5 days after a rain. And we had that drought, then we've had rain like every other day, folks. So I went over and checked those, and I only found 3 combs, folks, that weren't buggy. That's the thing about this time of year, and sumac, they get really buggy. And from a distance, they look nice and pretty and in good shape, but you get right up to it, and you've got the stem, the stalk, and then the comb kind of shoots out like this. We're right here at the bottom of the comb, and at the very top, if you see this brown mealy stuff, you can just move those berries aside, and you're going to find that it's throughout the stem, and those are bugs and bugs' nests. So I only found 3 that didn't have those in it, and I collected them, and what I did was remove the berries, and they are drying, and I'll just grind them up and use them as spice. They have like a little lemony, more lemon than anything. So it makes for a good spice to put in some stir fries or some scrambled eggs, right? So, holy moly, this is 15 minutes long. Okay, I hope you all had a good day. So I hope you all have a good night. And I hope you're being productive. I hope you're being busy. I hope you're having some forethought. And I hope you're always planning ahead to what you could improve on. Those little tiny things that we sometimes miss. Um, Sometimes we miss them and we don't know that we've missed it. We thought we were very thorough until something comes up and you wonder why you didn't think of that little tiny item. It was so simple, right? So I hope you're paying attention to that. I hope you're resting when you can. And I hope you all have a good night. Thank you.